Joining me around the table, Congressman Steny Hoyer, House Minority Whip and second-in-command to Nancy Pelosi, and Congressman Tom Cole, a Deputy Whip for the Republican Conference. Also, CNN's Dana Bash, Chief Congressional Correspondent for us. The only people more unpopular in Washington than the president at this point is you all.
What a positive way to start.
And welcome. Why is that?
Well, because Congress, I think, is perceived as not very effective and not working well.
Is it perceived that way, or has it been?
I think it is. I think that's the reality. My friend Tom, before we broke, said, well, the Senate wasn't passing things. But the fact is, frankly, the Senate has passed most of the big pieces of legislation that we've dealt with and that we've come then, and by pretty bipartisan margins. And then the House has come at one stage or another to support those. But the fact is, generally, I think the American public generalizes the Congress is not working.
Let me get you to fill us in on one thing, because I want to ask specifically about immigration reform, which I recall saying last year was definitely going to pass. So I'm not going to say that this year. But the House Republicans have been working on putting something on the floor, and I wanted to get kind of a sense of where it's going.
My understanding is that the Speaker, along with some of his top lieutenants, maybe you're one of them, probably, working on a set of
Master Sergeant, I'm well
principles, a set of principles that he will deliver to and discuss with the Republican caucus at the retreat, which is going to be this coming week. And the idea is to deal with border security and some of the top issues, of course, for conservatives, but also to sort of dip a toe in the water to perhaps at least giving legal status to illegal immigrants. But the most important thing is that he, the Speaker, understands that this is going to have to be done piecemeal. And most interesting is that the president and Democrats have been saying, okay, we don't want to do it that way, but we're going to let you do it, because they want to get as far as they can in order to try to meld bills between the House and the Senate in what's known as the conference.
Why are you laughing? Is it going to happen?
Well, we'll see. Look, I think we've got a Republican retreat later this week. A lot of basic decisions will be made there. We've already moved about 4 bills through the Judiciary Committee, so there are pieces that are available to go to the floor. There's some other things that are still in progress, so I certainly think that items can pass here. But I think the Speaker had it about right. Look, it's going to be piece by piece. It's going to be step by step. It's not going to be the comprehensive sort of Senate approach, and it's going to have to be bipartisan if it's going to move.
Now, we can, I think, probably rule out some conservative Republicans who do not want a pathway to legalization. So the question will be, how many Democrats can you wrap around some of these bills? It is my understanding that one of these would suggest, yes, for children who were brought here, not of their own free will, but with their parents, they can have a pathway to citizenship, but not the others would get a pathway to legalization, not citizenship. Is that something you could work with?
Candy, we're for that, as you know. We passed a DREAM Act in times past.
Right, but what about
we believe the young people ought to be able to, who didn't do anything wrong, who came here, who have done well in high school and or college, ought to be recognized on a pathway to citizenship. The fact is that the Senate passed, in a very bipartisan way, a comprehensive immigration bill. Now, what the president says and what we have said we would consider is, if the Republicans can move forward with some aspects of immigration reform, that's fine. We can pass those. We'll have to meet with the Senate that's passed a comprehensive immigration reform and see what comes out of conference. But we strongly believe that it needs to be a comprehensive bill, not simply a piecemeal bill. Because if you pass just the economic segments, which we could support, and not the other segments that give people confidence that they can continue to work, support their families, and be here, that's not a bill that will fix the broken system.
Well, not a promising approach. I mean, look, the Speaker's made a couple of commitments to his own conference. The first one is, I'm not going into conference with something that doesn't have a majority Republican support. I'm not taking something out that doesn't have majority support. So I take him at his word, and I think that's the appropriate way to go. But look, this is a huge problem, and to call the Senate bill bipartisan, it is, but it was a minority of Republicans with an overwhelming majority of Democrats. You're not going to move a product like that through the House. A minority of the minority in the Senate can't dictate to the majority of the majority in the House.
And Congressman, tell me if you agree with this, just sort of looking at the House big picture, particularly your conference, the Republicans. My understanding is that looking at it, it's about 30 of you based on the number of Hispanic voters in their districts, really want to have some kind of immigration reform. About 30 kind of could go either way, and most of the rest, it is a liability to do something that even goes towards legal status, because of the whole idea that most of the districts are very conservative, and their biggest fear is a challenge from the right. So that is the big problem that John Boehner has in trying to find some kind of consensus within your caucus. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do, but I also think this is a bigger problem in the sense that we have two fundamental American values in conflict here. We are a nation of immigrants. We're proud of that. Frankly, there's no immigrant group that's ever come to this country that hasn't contributed more than it ever received back. So that's something we celebrate. We're also a country of laws. That's how you unite 315 million Americans across a great continent. So those things are in conflict here. I think there's not going to be an amnesty bill, no doubt about that. Frankly, nobody's put one on the table, in my view.
It's not going to be called that much.
Well, look, if you look at any of the proposals, background check, English, requirement to have a job, all that sort of thing, that you can say it's enough, fines, or not enough, but it's not amnesty. So people that use that phrase, I think, mischaracterize whatever we're going to do.
Tom, if I can step in, though, first of all, a third of the Republicans in the United States Senate voted for the comprehensive bill. 68 people voted for it. The fact of the matter is it was comprehensive. It did have a path. It wasn't amnesty. It provided for working, paying taxes, and a long time, 10 years, then 3 additional years, so that, frankly, when Tom says the majority of the majority has to be for something, comprehensive immigration reform, Tom, in my opinion, would pass the House today. There are 218-plus votes, in my view, to pass that bill. But you're locking up pieces of legislation because you have a hardcore majority of your party that will not be for it.
I didn't notice when you were in the majority, you put a lot of bills on the floor that the majority of your conference wasn't for. Matter of fact, I don't recall any. Actually, John Boehner did that on the fiscal cliff, did that on violence against women. But the reality is that's just the way Congress works. The bill that was in the Senate, was again put on by the Democrats.
We got 218 Democrats for the things we put on the floor. You've had great trouble in any of the major pieces of legislation doing that. Without Democrats, you couldn't have passed most of the major legislation we passed. That's true of immigration reform, and we need to pass it.
I suggest we've been bipartisan in our approach. We've been reaching out to you. Too bad you didn't do that when you were in the majority.
Including you two will be running for re-election this year. And I want to ask you both a political question. The first one comes off this new Washington Post ABC News poll, and to you, Congressman Hoyer. The opinion of the way President Obama is handling the economy, 43% approve, 55% disapprove. Is he a drag on your ticket?
No, what they disapprove of is the economy, and the president takes responsibility whether he's Republican or Democrat.
So does that mean that he drags Democrats at this point?
I talked to a lot of people last night involved in the economy. They think the economy is getting better. I frankly think that the confidence that was built up by passing the omnibus appropriation bill is going to be helpful to the economy. I think we acted in a bipartisan fashion. I think that's good for the economy. Now, in my opinion, we need to extend unemployment insurance. We need to get a minimum wage bill done. We need to address some of the other issues, like comprehensive immigration reform, that every economist says will grow the economy. But the failure to do that has been a drag on the economy, not because the president has.
Is it a drag on Democrats running for re-election?
I think if you look at the same poll, Democrats are doing better than Republicans. Neither of us are doing very well.
Very well.
So to the extent that the economy gets better, frankly, and the president gets credit for that, I think we're going to do better.
I am back with a lot of nodding heads here with Tom Cole, Dana Bash, the speaker and his future. It was a great appearance on Leno, I thought.
Oh, it was. And I've been to the bar that his family owned, and I think that he's right. I've also seen him try to wrangle people as he has done as one of 11 brothers and sisters. So I think all of that experience helps him. I actually believe, in watching your caucus, that the experience that he had during the shutdown has made him much more powerful, and that the people who doubted him and who did not think that he was doing right by conservatives looked at him and said, you know what, we followed your lead. You followed our lead, more importantly. We wanted to take this to a shutdown, and you were right. So I think that he has more power than he had before, ironically. He seems to me to be somebody who is determined to, he's already, he's running for re-election. He wants to be speaker again. And I also think that, like, who else is going to do it?
Who else wants to do it? Yeah. Well, it's easier to, to deal with them in a bar because you can give them a drink. But in the conference, look, it's a very independent conference. It's a spirited conference. Half of them have been there 3 years or less. But I agree with you about John Boehner. I think actually, post-shutdown, everything from the Ryan Murray deal to the omnibus, he's led with a great deal of strength and a great deal of support. It's interesting to me, and look, people are allowed to vote the way they think, but nobody came to the floor, nobody spoke in conference against the Ryan Murray bill or, frankly, against the omnibus. So I think he's actually leading with a lot of strength right now, and that tells me we perhaps could have a much more productive year than people might believe at this point.
He'll be reelected.
We'll see.
I was just going to say, I know a couple of people you might name that want to be speaker.
Right, I probably could. We'll see. John Boehner has been unable to get his caucus to do, except in rare instances, what he believed, in my opinion, was the right thing to do. I think he thought it was the wrong thing to do on government. I thought it was bad politics. I frankly think he thinks comprehensive immigration reform is good politics for Republicans. He believes that the debt limit ought not to be put at risk. The shutdown occurred because of the deal on the debt limit. That's the same thing that happened in August of 2011. We'll see whether or not he can get his caucus to vote to get the debt limit done, as I think many of his caucus believe ought to be done, put behind them, not precipitate another shutdown of government.
Here, I wish the president would be more... Look, we negotiated a debt ceiling deal in 2011. I voted for that. But while we raised the debt, we reduced the debt long term. I thought that was the appropriate thing to do. I think trying to find some way to link these things together is the appropriate thing to do. But in the end, nobody's defaulted on the debt in the history of the United States. Nobody did in October. I don't think we will next month either.
And, I think that just to sort of put a button on what you're saying, what you're hearing now is the rub between trying to get members of Congress elected this year in a midterm election and people like John Boehner and others who are thinking about the Republican Party and Democratic Party, bigger picture on a national level. And they really do hit up against each other and contradict each other. This is going to be a base.
It's the presidential wing arguing with the
congressional wing. Right, this is going to be a base election.
The national wing with the parochial wing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a base election versus a national election where you have to really broaden your...
Yeah.
So I need a one-word answer from all of you. Assuming Republicans win a majority still, maybe a slimmer majority, but a majority in the House, will Speaker Boehner remain Speaker Boehner?
Tom would be more likely to have that answer than me.
Yeah, but you're a pretty good political observer.
I think John Boehner has been a responsible leader. His party hasn't followed him. I think that's been a problem.
Yes,
absolutely, no question about it.
Yeah, okay. Dana Bash, Congressman Cole, Congressman Hoyer, thank you all for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Candy.
And thank you for watching State of the Union.